In her introduction to the Reed of God, Carol Houselander recounts for us how, as a child, someone whom she greatly respected told her never to do anything that Our Lady would not do, for if she did, the angels in heaven would blush. Carol took this older person's advice to heart, and for a short time she avoided doing those simple little pranks that often spell joy for her as a child, but would be considered questionable for anybody choosing to imitate the holiness of Mary. But her inoculation of piety wore off quickly. Primarily, she says, because she found it difficult to imagine Mary, the Mother of God, doing anything that she'd like to do, simply because she couldn't imagine Mary doing anything at all. I like this simple little story because perhaps it speaks for many of us, in that I believe that there are people who, in loving Mary, still think of her as someone who never does anything that we do. To many of us, Mary is the Madonna of the Christmas card, kneeling in quiet contemplation on this immaculately clean, stable floor with shining snow. She's almost surreal. Nothing about her seems ordinary, not even the stable in which Jesus is born. I think that in many people's minds, the Mother of God comes only to mean a pale statue or a bright picture or a tiny medal or a great stained glass window. What we forget is the simple truth that Mary, the Mother of God on earth, was and is in heaven a very human person. We don't only do this with Mary, but we do it with the saints as well. One of my favorite contemporary spiritual writers, John Shea, has a clever little poem about the saints, and it's entitled Friends in High Places. And he writes, "We like them up there as they shine in stained glass glory, a candle of a nun with a flame dancing on her head, a young man with steeple fingers holding a lily, a knight ramming a lance down a dragon's throat, a queen doling out bread to a beggar, a monk with a pen poised like a dagger. They live between us and God." But when did we notice the feet of the candle-like nun danced on the earth while the flame danced on her head? That there was a vein bulging in the neck of the young man and his steeple fingers choked the stem of the lily? The fear-bitten lip of the knight who realized the dragon was devouring his lance? The queen was as angry to give as the beggar was to receive. The monk's eyes were wide with wonder, and the pen trembled in his hands. The point that John Shea is making is that we need to see the saints in their humanity. Otherwise, how do we bridge this gap between their heroic virtue and our weakness? We cannot hope to imitate them and model their holiness or imitate their holiness without first walking in their shoes and touching their skin. You see, I believe what makes us truly love a particular saint is the little human detail we discover about their lives. For instance, I love St. Catherine of Siena because she loved her garden, which is something I love to do. And she gilded tiny little oranges to humor a very difficult pope that eventually brought him back to Rome. She was not only the most dynamic woman in the history of the church, but I think she's the best friend to any woman that ever lived. Such simple things like gilding oranges and loving a garden and being such a wonderful friend helped me to forget that she was fiercely ascetic and that for years she fed only on the Eucharist. I love Pope John Paul II, Saint John Paul, because of his simple love of nature. And as Pope, those simple human gestures of affection he showed time and time again when he was in a crowd of people. I absolutely love St. Francis of Assisi because all of creation was his family. He called them Brother Sun, Sister Moon, Brother Wolf, and believe it or not, even Sister Death. And like the saints, it is Our Lady and no other saint whom we can really imitate. All the canonized saints in the church calendar had special vocations and a special gift for their fulfillment. Each saint in the church has his or her special work, a work particular to that holy person. St. Alphonsus, who had such great love for the Eucharist, was also known as the patron saint of anybody who suffers from arthritis. Mother Teresa was gifted for the way she worked with the poorest of the poor. Martin de Porres ministered to the slaves in the galley ships in Peru. But Mary had to include in her vocation, in her life's work, that one essential thing that was to be hidden in every other vocation, in every other life. She is not only human like the other saints, she is humanity itself. And the one thing that she did and that she does is the one thing that we all have to do, and it sounds simple, but it's the most challenging thing we have in our lives, and that is to bear Christ into this world, to bring Jesus into this world through our witness and our lives.